welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, and I really appreciate all the lovely comments and what have you. Basically, as long as you carry on sort of, enjoying these episodes of the show, I'll carry on making them. I mean, that's what I'm here for, entertain, hopefully. And as I said over the last couple of episodes of the show, with the sort of the easing of lockdown and that kind of thing, new stuff is starting to be released. Samples are flowing, shall we say, and one can do some more up-to-date episodes of the show, and indeed today is another one of those. And as the global launch of the Tomatin French collection has now happened, I can quite happily do my review of them, but there's only 3 of them, so, and as you know, I like to do at least half a dozen, so I thought, well, maybe I could, just shoehorn in some other new releases, and I thought, no, let's keep it all sort of Tomatin related. And so I had a rummage in the Tomatin box, and I found some rather interesting stuff. I thought, yeah, let's do maybe some indie bottlings, and then I discovered I had these 3 lovely samples. I mean, they are a bit old now. I mean, the 36-year-old is batch 2, and I think they're on batch 7 now, as a release of the 36-year-old, so it dates back a bit. And obviously the contrast, as you've seen, which I thought was a really great idea. And this is the thing with Tomatin. I mean, for a number of years now, they've been really sort of doing some interesting stuff, really innovating, and it's not just in the stuff that they release. It's across the board, really. I mean, for example, the samples that they've sent, lovely little sort of, quite weighty bottles, and, normally a lot of the time I get sent samples, they're just either wrapped in bubble wrap or in a box or something like that, which is absolutely fine, because it's, you just want to sort of taste the juice at the end of the day. But, these 3 samples all came in this lovely little box, complete with sort of, straw lining, little card, and sort of all that kind of stuff. And it's just these little touches, that just makes the distillery, I think, stand out, and it's when you sort of think about sort of like the what the distilleries are doing, or certainly what Tomatin is doing with regards to sort of trying out these different casks and things like that. These will have all been laid down well before Graham Unson's time, and it just makes you think, that when you're sort of like, the master blender, distiller, whatever of a distillery, you're projecting what you might think the distillery wants in about sort of like 10, 15 years time, long probably after you've left the distillery or retired or what have you, and a lot of the time you never actually see the fruits of your labour, so to speak. So you're always working with whatever somebody else did 10 or 15 years ago, and again, it just goes to show you that the distilleries themselves are bigger than the individuals. They will carry on producing whiskey long after the staff at the distillery have retired or passed away or what have you. And it's a testament, I guess, to distilleries as a whole, that they can have this kind of foresight. And yeah, I imagine some experiments never work. I guess there's, if you're playing around with all these different casks and what have you, some are probably not going to develop quite as you expect, and quietly never get released. But when they do release some interesting stuff, certainly with regards to Tomatin, it's always sort of like worth having a look at, because they, like I said, really sort of doing some intriguing stuff. Now, this is obviously not the first episode of the show I've ever done on Tomatin, because the distillery keep kindly sending me samples, which I'm very, very grateful to them for. So I don't really need to talk very much about the distillery itself, so let's just have a look at the lineup. Okay, so we're going to kick off with the Bourbon edition in the contrast, the little sort of two 35cl bottlings, which was released back in 2015. I mean, brilliant idea in my opinion. You know, selecting casks from, you know, both American oak and sherry from the same period of time. So basically, the Bourbon edition is bottled at 46%. It was a vatting of 2 hoggies distilled in 1997, 2 barrels distilled in 1997, 3 hoggies distilled in 98. 2 barrels from 91, 4 barrels from 2002, and 2 barrels from 2006. So the range, obviously, of ages goes from 9 to 18 years of age. And like I said, I mean, when they released it, this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, you know, great presentation, great gift, and well, we'll see if the whiskey kind of lived up to all the packaging, shan't we? Then we're going to move on to the 3 brand spanking new releases in what they're calling the French collection. The first is what they're calling the Monbazillac Edition. It's a 12-year-old. Now, Monbazillac, for those of you that don't know, is a sweet French wine that's made in the southwest of the region from the Semillon grape. Same grape that they happen to use in Bordeaux to make Sauternes with, but quite considerably different wines, it has to be said. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what the difference is between these 2 bottlings. So the Monbazillac Edition was distilled in April of 2008, moved into Monbazillac casks in July of 2017, and bottled in March of this year. And again, one of the things I really love about the distillery is their complete openness. You know, they literally tell you everything that you want to know. You know, you get all the information, no opacity, obviously bottled at 46% and non-chill filtered, non-coloured, etc., which is what we like to see, isn't it? So yeah, that's the Monbazillac Edition. Second bottling we'll be looking at is the Sauternes Edition. So distilled in September of 2008, moved into Sauternes cask again in July of 17, and bottled in March of this year. Now, interesting, the Rivesaltes Edition. Now, I haven't seen very many Rivesaltes finished spirits, whiskies at all, in actual fact. Now, again, Rivesaltes is a fortified French wine from the south of France, and it's a lovely wine. I love Rivesaltes. I mean, it can be made from a variety of both red and white grape varieties, principally based around Grenache, more often than not Grenache Noir, Grenache Gris and Grenache Blanc. Also Muscat can be used in Rivesaltes, although there is a specific appellation for Muscat, I think Muscat de Rivesaltes. And again, it's a sort of a lovely sweet wine, lovely dessert wine. So you get both reds, you get white varieties, you get the sort of the blend of the grapes as well to produce sort of like, you know, a lighter style of sweet wine. And I love Rivesaltes. I think it's great. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that's worked with the Tomatin spirit. So this was again distilled in September of 2008, moved into Rivesaltes casks in July of 2017, and bottled in March of this year. Then we're going to move on to the second of the CONTRASTL bottlings. This is the Sherry Edition. So the makeup of butts was obviously the same, from the same years as the Bourbon Edition, but there was less of them. So there was just the one butt from 97, or was it the 2 butts, I think, from 97, butt from 98, 91, 2002 and 2006. So again, like I said, bottled in 2015. And finally, this baby, and I think I reviewed this once before, and apologies for reviewing it again, but you know, I think it was, from memory, a rather good bottling. So, you know, not going to have an issue with reviewing it once again. So yes, this was the 36-year-old batch number 2. It was basically originally aged in ex-bourbon cask, finished in sherry, I believe, for about 7 years, I think. And it was distilled in 1980 and bottled in 2016. And as far as I'm aware, it's still available. I think you can I think the Whiskey Exchange still have some stock of it, but it's going to cost you 650 quid. But we shall see. We'll see whether it's worth it or not then. When we get to taste it. So anyway, let's kick off with the CONTRASTL Bourbon Edition then. Right, okay, so let's kick off with the Bourbon Edition. Let's see what the nose gives on this end, shall we? That's a lovely nose. That's actually pretty estery for Tomatin, and this has always been the thing with Tomatin. I've always felt that Tomatin really needed a little bit of sherry in the vatting to kind of like just, you know, give it some more depth. And I've never really warmed to just purely American oak aged Tomatin. It's weird, isn't it? You would have thought that I would have done. I mean, I remember the first time I tasted the range, it was when there was the 12 and the 15 and the 18. I think the 15 was wholly American oak aged, and it just didn't really sing to me, and I just thought maybe it goes through a bit of an odd phase at 15. I don't know, maybe, you know, stroppy teenager, I guess. But this is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, pineapple, banana, apricot, barley, granite, touch of straw, a little bit of baked fruit, getting an element of mature oak coming through. I mean, this was just a sublime blend of different aged spirits, and again, just goes to show you, you know, what you can achieve when you're not tied to an age statement, you know. And again, people get sort of really bent up out of shape about sort of no age statement bottlings, but you know, when you have the ability to play around with this kind of stuff, you know, if they wanted to put an age statement on, it would have had to have been an 8-year-old, and that really is not kind of indicative of what is in the glass. That is absolutely stunning. I mean, absolutely beautiful. See what that's like. Stunning, absolutely stunning. I mean, kicks off with a little bit more barley, and it kind of kicks off with the younger spirit, and certainly, like I said, a little bit more barley, a little bit less tropical fruit, still noticeable, a little bit of honey, and then the oak starts to move in on the mid palate. You're getting that slightly sawdusty, mature American oak, and it really followed through on the finish. Wonderfully juicy, elegant, deep. I mean, that is just a stunning whiskey, it has to be said. A great one to start with. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Monbazillac Edition. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? That's quite interesting. On the one hand, I'm getting kind of like straw, herbal barley, and a sort of a fresh, almost crisp white fruit kind of note. A little bit of nutty honey, barley, some waxy fruit as well. It's not as sweet as you would expect. It's not as honeyed, and this is the thing that I vaguely remember about Monbazillac. It's not an area that I'm particularly well versed in, but I do remember the Monbazillac wines not being as overtly sweet as, say, Sauternes. Touch of vanilla, a little bit of toasty oak coming through. I mean, it's a lovely nose. It's quite fragrant as well, and really well balanced. I'm certainly getting the character of the spirit. Maybe not quite so tropical, but it's got a lovely character, lovely softness. So it smells like. That's a lovely waxy, slightly oily mouthfeel. It kicks off with a more fresher white fruits, apricot, little thread of honey starting to come through, but it's kind of a delicate honey. It's not hugely sweet. There's a lovely nuttiness as well. Certainly getting a little bit of barley, a little bit of straw, a little bit of wood spice as well, touch of tannin. Again, really beautifully balanced, it has to be said. Really complex, lovely progression as well, kind of kicking off with the sort of the winey fruits, and then moving into the sort of spirit character on an oak on the mid palate, and then the sort of winey, slightly nutty fruits, a little bit of honey again, kind of comes back on the finish, and I think that's absolutely delightful. I think that's got a recommended retail price of around about 65 quid a bottle, which a little bit high for a 12-year-old, but you know, I really think that's worth it. And I think if that kind of sounds like your cup of tea, shall we say, then I imagine it's going to be fairly widely available in all good whisky stockists. Okay, so let's move on to the Sauternes Edition. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Well, that leaves you in absolutely no doubt that this is a Sauternes finish. I mean, it's really quite heavy on the Sauternes. Lots of grapey honey, more honey than the Monbazillac. It's got a little bit of almost pollen heavy, flowery kind of note. There's a little bit of pepper, straw, apricot, peach possibly. Again, the balance is slightly more edging towards the Sauternes cask, but it's still quite well balanced. I'm still getting Tomatin character. It's not like it's completely and utterly swamped by the Sauternes, but like I said, I think the Sauternes is certainly a little bit more dominant on the nose. Let's see what the palate's like. Again, it kind of kicks off with the grapey, honeyed Sauternes character. There's a little bit of straw, some beeswax, some more honey. But then I'm getting a fresher feel to the mid palate, a little more minerality, which is absolutely lovely. Some vanilla, a little bit of coffee spice as well. Certainly, again, it does seem like that the spirit is kind of coming through on the mid palate, and it's got a fresher finish to it than the Monbazillac. But then it doesn't. The Sauternes doesn't kind of come back like the Monbazillac. The sort of the wininess kind of comes back on the finish. With this, it kind of like the spirit just kind of holds out on the finish, and so like it's got I wouldn't say an austere finish, but it's certainly got a minerally fresher finish to it. So again, I think that's got a lovely progression, and it's a lovely bottle. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Rivesaltes Edition. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Earthy, slightly funky, but not in a sort of an unpleasant funky kind of way. We're not talking a Hampton funk, shall we say, for argument's sake. It's got a touch of dried grass, apricot, white fruit. It's got, I would say, the Rivesaltes casks that they're using have probably been, I would imagine, more white grape Rivesaltes, because I'm not really getting a great deal of red winey or red grape kind of character. There's a little bit of dusty spice. There's possibly a soupçon of, getting all French now, a soupçon of maybe possibly red fruits, but it's quite floral. It's got sort of hyacinth possibly, honeysuckle, bit of charred oak. Like I said, it's got a slightly more kind of funky kind of character, but but that's kind of working nicely. I like it. It just goes to show that each of these 3 bottlings, and there is actually a 4th in the range, but I don't know whether I'm supposed to be able to tell you that or not, because it's not going to be released until later on in the year, so I'm not going to mention it anyway. I'm just going to concentrate on what I've got. And yeah, I kind of like this. It's got a it's got a bit of an edge to it. It's kind of, but it's not sort of too weird. Let's see what the parts are. A little bit fresher, a little bit grapier on the palate. It's got that distinct late harvested winey kind of character if you know your wines. Again, quite floral, honeysuckle, hyacinth, straw, earth. Yeah, bit of wood spice, little, very much. Sort of more wood shavings, I guess, than wood spice. Lovely finish to it. Again, quite citric on the finish. I'm getting kind of like sort of almost kind of lime jelly, which is interesting. Again, slightly more mineral. So it is kind of, on the finish, it's kind of reminding me a little bit more of the Sauternes finish in the fact that, you know, the finishing cask comes up front, spirit character kind of pushes through on the mid palate and kind of lingers through to the end. But either way, I think that's really, really nice. I like that. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Tomatin Contrast Sherry Edition. Let's see what those gives on this one, shall we? Okay, yep, sherry. Herbal, spicy. It's kind of almost, it's not a sort of a first fill Oloroso kind of monstery nose. It's got a more refilly kind of character. And I'm getting the sort of the subtropical kind of notes that I found on the Bourbon edition kind of coming through. A little bit of dusty oak, dried orange, cinnamon. I mean that's stunningly good. I mean, you know, and how many times do you hear me say a sherry matured spirit is stunningly good? But I mean, this is stunningly good. I mean, balanced, elegant, getting the sherry, getting the spirit character. And this is what I love about, you know, sherry whiskies. This is the kind of sherry whiskey that I really want to drink. You know, I mean, I can sniff this all day. I mean, it's getting that sort of almost kind of cognac-esque dried fruit, that sort of slightly higher toned, elegant dried fruit, as opposed to sort of like big and raisinated and, you know, burnt and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just stunningly good. Let's see what that's like. Again, kicks off with a slightly younger spirit, but I'm getting sort of baked fruit, lighter sultanery dried fruit, a little bit of dried orange peel. Mid palate, in comes a sort of like the granity spirit character, and just reminding you that it is a Highland spirit. There's a little bit of barley, a little bit of almost tropical fruit as well, some vanilla, clove. Then we're moving into the spice on the aftertaste. And again, I mean, that is just stunning. I mean, that is just absolutely gorgeous. It's got a lovely balance of maturity and youthfulness, which is, you know, what the best no-age statement bottlings will show you, you know. And like I said, for a sherry, wholly sherry matured whiskey, that has just got some lovely balance. And yeah, that was pretty damn good. And finally, we're on to the 36-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Oh, is that damn good? Or is that damn good? No, that's damn good. elegant, mature, slightly oily apricot, melon, guava, buttery oak, a touch of sherry. Again, this is it. It's got a lovely balance of sherry. It's getting a little herbal, so I'm getting a little bit more herbally sherry notes, mineral, honey, cinnamon, brown sugar. Almost kind of camphory note. The herbal note is kind of moving into. That is frighteningly good. I mean, that is again beautifully balanced. This is a textbook example of how to sort of produce a sherry finished whiskey. Give it plenty of time in the American oak, a little bit of time in the sherry, just to add that sort of nuance. That's what it's all about. Getting a little bit of lavender. Yeah, lavender sort of, or possibly, yeah, definitely a touch of lavender. I mean, that was just absolutely stunning. I mean, this is a sort of whiskey you stick your nose into and you pick up a new scent, a new aroma every time, and it's just one of those sort of just joy, an absolute joy. Anyway, let's see what the pal's like. A little bit more sherry on the palate. Kind of kicks off with sort of the sherry dried fruits, but again I'm getting sort of like mature barley, dusty oak, walnut shell, spice, crystallized orange, a little bit of lemon as well. So again, a lovely vibrant minerality on the finish. Touch of ginger as well. Again, that sort of slightly lavender note is noticeable as well, with a touch of heather as well. I mean, wow. I mean, again, really complex, really well balanced. I mean, I don't know what sort of batch 7 is like at the moment. There you go. There's a hint for you guys at the distillery. Please send me a sample. But this batch 2 was just stunningly good, absolutely amazing. Just a joy, and certainly if you have sort of seriously deep pockets, you can enjoy that as well. Yeah. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Firstly, a big thank you to the Tomatin distillery for kindly sending the samples. It's really appreciated. I think the Contrast bottling was probably the first wholly American oak aged bottling of Tomatin that really sort of made me go, actually I really like Tomatin in American oak. Up until that point I'd been slightly ambivalent, it has to be said, but I think that was the moment that I just went, you know what, Tomatin in American oak is pretty damn good. The new stuff, which is really what the show is all about. The Monbazillac, oh fuck's sake. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. Firstly, a big thank you to all the guys at Tomatin for kindly, get it right. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. Firstly, big thank you to Tomatin for kindly sending the samples for today's episode of the show. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Yeah, well, the Contrast Bourbon Edition probably was the bottle that really sort of changed my mind about American oak aged Tomatin. It really did sort of like go, yeah, maybe it is actually pretty damn good in American oak. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just had a bit of an off day when I tasted it first time around, or the 15-year-old I should say. But that really was an exceptionally good bottling. onto the new French collection. I like the Monbazillac bottling. Yeah, it had again a lovely balance and a lovely progression, sort of starting off with the wininess kind of coming back into the mid palate with the sort of the distillery character and finishing on the wine. I just thought I was really impressed by that, and I guess that's the thing when you're sort of using weird and wonderful casks, and you know you if you're trying to sell it, should we say, in an abstract kind of manner, then you know you want to be able to enthuse about a bottling to a potential customer, and certainly I love that. I thought that was brilliant. The Sauternes, I mean, again, good balance to it. A little bit more heavier on the Sauternes, but then you know Sauternes does have a bit of a powerful personality, and although I think I prefer the Monbazillac to the Sauternes, I still think the Sauternes finish is a pretty good bottling. And I love the Rivesaltes. I love the slight funkiness of it. You know, whether that was designed to do that, I don't know, or whether I imagine it's probably more like it kind of happened. You know, that sort of slight funky character kind of developed over time. But it's not an off-putting funkiness. It's just adding an extra dimension to the spirit. So I think all in all, again, you know, a really intriguing bunch of bottlings, shall we say. The Contrast sherry, as I like my sherry. I mean, balance, not too sherried. I mean, you know, although wholly sherry matured, it was again really well balanced. And I imagine the majority of those casks will probably refill butts, I imagine, rather than first fill, because it just wasn't swamped. And the 36-year-old, well, you know, for that kind of money, you'd want it to be something pretty special, and it has to be said that was something pretty special, and just a gorgeous way to end the show on. So yeah, there you have it. That's this week's episode of the show. I hope you've enjoyed my review of these spirits. Until next week. Hopefully I'll be doing something even newer next week, and this is a nice thing. I've got a load of stuff kind of waiting in the wings, you know, mainly for sort of global launches to be done before I can actually do, you know, my bit, shall we say. And you know, it's becoming sort of more prevalent, I guess, you know, that sort of distilleries are sending out these sort of samples and saying, please don't do anything until we've had our official launch. And fine with that. I've got no problem with that at all. When you think about the time and the effort and the money that goes into these kind of things, then yeah, I'm more than happy to wait my turn to do my bit, shall we say. Anyway, until next week, all that's left to say is good afternoon and good dramming.